could introduce ourselves, but if you're watching us, you can see our names anyway, so it doesn't make much sense. So I don't see anybody for public comments unless Leon has a comment to make. Leon, do you have anything that you wanted to say, or?
Oh, no public comments. No.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So the next business is to ask the treasurer for her report.
Ray, excuse me.
Mary?
Ray,
Yes.
excuse me. Matthew's having audio issues and he'd like you to know that.
Testing.
Okay.
Anybody hear me?
Yeah, we
Yeah, I
can.
can hear you,
Matt.
Yep.
Can't hear anybody.
Oh. That I don't know anything about. But, so Mary, you want to speak?
Yes, there was not really anything all that unusual that occurred in December. We did get a significant amount of the late taxes paid in December, and almost an equal amount paid, or several of the outstanding properties paid in January, and that check will be coming soon. So again, thank you to the residents or the taxpayers to the Village of North Bennington, because it was just an outstanding job done here, given the economic conditions for prompt payment.
Okay. Thank you very much. We don't have any policies, I assume. Well, we have a consent agenda. Unfortunately, the consent agenda is listed, doesn't list the items on it. And that's because I didn't list them, I suppose, on my draft, and Amy didn't know to put them in herself. But so the two items are, of course, approval of last month's minutes and approval of the warrants. So if anybody would like to, has any questions or comments now, or we can move the passage, the acceptance of these, and then take comments. So I guess I'm looking for a motion.
So I could move to accept the, the minutes?
Well, you could do it as the consent agenda, or you could
Okay.
do it as individually.
Okay, the consent agenda
Okay,
I'll second that.
from, okay.
all right. So the warrants have payments to the Village School, Highland Hall, and Southshire for this month. And also a payment for our post office box rental, which before the next one rolls around next year, maybe we ought to think about whether we want to continue that box. It gets very little mail. But it does give us an anchorage in the village in case someone does want to send us information that way. And a payment to Lori for her minutes last month. So that's the warrants, and the minutes are self-explanatory. They're in the packet. Anybody have any comments or questions about those items?
Ray, did you mention warrants plural? I knew of only
No,
one.
I'm sorry. I think there's only one warrant.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's only one tuition check, only for the village school.
I saw
Yeah,
something
it's just Lori, the village school, and
Yeah.
the post office.
well, why did let me, well,
There was a Highland Hall that was paid in December, and Southshire in December. So
okay,
those two were approved
yeah.
in December.
I think I just looked at it though, and it,
Actually, the one that came in the mail to me, it has those three items. So the village school, the post office, and me.
Yeah,
That's all I have.
right. And I had the other payments approved as of last month.
Correct. That's what I have as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, I don't know why I'm saying that then, because that's what I see, but I didn't see that before. And maybe I was looking at an old warrant. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Ray, I just pulled up the DocuSign document and
Yeah.
the Highland Hall in Southshire were
Are
on
on
the
that.
last.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I believe you. I just,
Right, and the paperwork that came from the SU also just has those three items that you mentioned. Lori, the village school, and the post office.
yeah. Okay, fine. So to be correct before we vote, they're correct. And it's just the item for the post office, Lori, and the village school. Thank you. All right, are we ready to vote? All in favor? I guess raise your hand. Aye, yep. All right, there aren't any policies, are there? I didn't see any listed, so
Shouldn't
I
be.
assume that we can skip that item. And although while we're on policy briefly, I'll touch on the fact that Kiernan has agreed to be our representative on the policy committee. Leon's here.
Yes.
Meet Kiernan.
Oh,
Hopefully you'll be able to go to the next meeting. When is the next meeting, Leon?
it'll be February
Okay,
1 at 4:30.
okay, great. And that brings us to, I believe, the superintendent. And this is, since we have Kate Abbott and Renee here as well, I assume we're going to hear from all of them or two of them, two of the
Yeah.
three. I'm not
They're
sure.
gonna be the bulk of the superintendent's report because of, the questions that Ray has been asking. So we want to present a response to all of the board, and hopefully we can accommodate what everyone's questions will be. Just a couple of general things from the SU point of view. What's going on, and you may have heard from listening to other board meetings, but we have, we have completed negotiations with the teachers and support staff for this year. They are going to ratify their contract the last week of January, and then the board's going to have to vote and ratify that. You will have to be part of that because your SVSU employees. I'm going to try and do a carousel meeting to do that the first week of February so that we can have our attorney and negotiating team only explain that, what happened once. So that, look for that tentatively in the first week of February. I'm happy to announce that. Yeah, thank you. But we'll begin negotiations immediately for the successor contract, July 1.
Right. Okay.
I am happy to announce that the supervisory union has hired an equity coordinator, and we will introduce him to all our boards. His name is Jonathan Phipps. We'll introduce him to all staff, all boards, once he comes on board, which will be starting next week. So it's been a long process for a position that I think will be valued, and I'm excited that that is finally coming to fruition.
And this, may I ask you a question? This is a coordinator position, is that right? Or how is it
Yeah,
styled?
coordinator. It's not a director level, no. It's a
Right.
coordinator level. Yep.
So they're maybe initiating some activities and coordinating
Professional
activities
learning.
at various sites,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, professional learning for staff, students,
Yeah.
consulting with the principals on matters of equity through the superintendent's office, and then to the community and to our boards. So you may have heard last week the governor and the Secretary of Education have outlined a goal that all students will return to school beginning of April, 5 days a week.
Mhm.
That's going to be a difficult challenge. I think it's an admirable goal. We would all love to have our students back 5 days a week. But the biggest challenge, two of the biggest challenges for us is transportation. We're still limited to 26 students on a bus. And if, particularly for our elementary schools, if the 6-foot physical distancing rule is in place, that's going to be very difficult to bring everybody back. We are in plan, we're constantly planning for the next phase. We're in what we consider phase 2. We hope to move to phase 3, which will be March. It was January, but it was always a target date. So now the target is in March. And for our phase 3, as long as we're still under a state of emergency, it's Wednesdays will always remain asynchronous, and so there'll be phase 3 would have all students in school Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Can we get there? I don't know yet, but we certainly that is our goal. Certainly discouraging for me to learn that teachers and educators are not part of the second phase of vaccines in the state of Vermont, because I think that would have worked to get to that goal that April 1, that we could bring all students back 5 days a week. But teachers are not going to be treated like in many other states they are in the phase 2 testing, because it's so important that we get our students back to school. So that's not going to happen in Vermont. And I think that could delay us getting everyone back as we negotiate with our teachers and support staff and try to keep everyone safe. So we are also going to be required to develop, or we're hearing this, we had to do a continuity of learning plan when we went into this remote learning. And the next phase, what we're hearing is we're going to have to develop a recovery plan that will have to be submitted to the state. The recovery plan is exactly what, it sounds like, how do we make up for lost time with our students, probably our most neediest students, and how are we going to address that, particularly in light that there may be additional funding coming into the state of Vermont to address this. So what will our plan? We don't have the details of that yet, of what that would look like, but that's just an overview of me, because I want to give the bulk of my time to Renee and Kate, who I think could enlighten the board. So I don't know how we do you want to ask your questions first, Ray, or do you think everyone knows what they are?
I have
and
one
just have
particular question
okay.
of you, which
Yeah.
doesn't relate to, well, it relates to COVID, but it doesn't relate to your description of what's happening in the other schools in the SVSU. It's a question of there's COVID relief funds that have gone to schools, and I'm seeing the first evidence of additional costs for the district as opposed to the individual schools that children tuition to. And that is the upcoming bill for conducting a basically mail-in balloting in March for the annual meeting. There's basically all the ballots will be submitted by mail to the members on the checklist and mailed back in, or brought in and dropped at the
Town hall,
town offices, because
clerk's office. Yeah.
the court, well, it's not the court, it's the town office, not Bennington, but north of the village. And because the voting normally has occurred in that space, and it's way too small for that to happen, this is why we've made this choice to do that. But Lori tells me that there's something like $4,600 worth of postage and other expenses, because there are ballot costs too, to program and produce the ballots, and then there's the time that someone is going to have to be there on the actual date of the Australian ballot for people who want to drop it off at that place and haven't mailed it in. There'll have to be presence there. And usually we pay 2 people to sit there. I don't know if we'll need 2 people in this particular case.
So yes, excuse me, but the law
Sure.
states that 2 people must be there at all
Okay.
times.
Yep.
Yep.
And
So,
during the day, I need to transport ballots 4 to 5 times to the machines
to be
in
run through.
Bennington, and 2 people have to do that as well, and they have to be in a locked bag. So, yeah, there's a whole lot. But go ahead. I'm sorry, but I wanted you to know that there's going
No,
to.
I appreciate your correcting me and amplifying the information. So what I'm saying is we looked like we're going to spend $6,000+, maybe more, I don't know, on this election when we normally would spend, what would we normally spend, Lori? I forget the totals. Couple thousand.
Yeah, that would be about it. But there's also so I just ordered 3,500 envelopes. So there's envelopes, there's the labor, I mean, you've got to have the labor to put together these ballots, to mail them out, and the addressing of the
Yeah.
envelopes, and yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot more than, probably 3 times as much than you're accustomed to spending, is my
Right.
guess.
Yep.
I ordered stamps today. Yeah, so that's multi-$1,000 in stamps.
Right. So is there money in those COVID relief funds to help districts cope with these additional costs that ballot for the town meeting day?
I don't have that answer. I don't know if Renee can answer that, because I don't know if we're beyond the deadline to spend, or has that been extended for the election?
That was
So I
originally.
can tell you that
Am
we
I
have been,
frozen?
Right, yeah. No, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
I can hear you, but go ahead.
It's my computer, sorry. I'll have to review the guidelines. That the only funds that we have available as of today right now are ESSER funds, which is the elementary and secondary
Yeah, and those
emergency
wouldn't be
relief
available for
funds.
this. Right.
So there has been an extension of the Corona Relief Fund, but that still has to flow through the Agency of Administration, and then it goes to the Agency of Education, and then it will come to us. We suspect things will probably, that were allowed before will be the same, but I'll have to take a deeper look to see if there are things specific relating to elections, or that might be an addendum that comes out, because it's probably something that wasn't considered by the legislature initially.
So
Well,
Renee,
what about Secretary of State's office or
so I can answer
Secretary
this
of
question.
Administration?
If you'd like, I can help answer this question.
Mhm.
So on January 6th and on January 7th, there were some moves to release COVID funds for balloting, voting, postage. That just happened end of last week. So there is money available. It has to be applied for. I haven't heard how I apply for that. I know that the Village of North Bennington, separately from the North Bennington Graded School District, is eligible for funds, because we have to do our voting in a different way as well. And that's the 3rd Tuesday in March. But there is a pot of money available, and it's specifically earmarked for places like us that don't have options and whose Board of Civil Authority has shut down their voting places, which is what they did to us, you know? So, so Renee, it might be hard to find, but because it just happened. So I expect that we would get more information on that. I've been dealing with Will Senning from the Secretary of State's office. He's awesome, and he's been trying to answer my questions as quickly as he can. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I've worked with Will before, so yeah, I can certainly reach out to him.
Great.
Thank
To
you.
make sure that I'm on the distribution list, so
Right.
I get the information. Otherwise, I wouldn't
Good.
necessarily know.
Because most of the chatter has been about those who are looking to delay their town meeting, but that is not the case here.
No, we're not
Correct.
looking to delay.
No, no.
And
It is the case with the Village of North Bennington, but it's not the case with the North Bennington Graded
Right.
School District.
right.
And the other challenge for us is doing the informational meetings the night before, and that's what we're trying to work the details out right now on how we're would like
Right.
to do one meeting that one Zoom meeting that you can log into, and then every meeting has been warned 15 minutes after that. So people don't have to log into a separate meeting for the SU, the MAU, the Union Elementary Board. And so
Yeah,
Jim,
we're a little
there-
different
there's
because we're stuck
Saturday.
with a Saturday meeting.
yes, you've always done the Saturday morning, yeah.
Right. And we didn't have the forethought to see that we were going to need to do this. So we're still stuck with it
Yeah.
for this year. So we'll have to strategize about what we're going to do to try to
Yeah,
get
it's
as
stressing
many
everyone at
people
this
as
point. So I'm
possible.
sure Lori, it's yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll continue to work it from our end too, and any information you can share with us, I'm sure we'd
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, because we typically include that on the postcards that we mail out.
Yep.
Right.
So we need to know,
Which we still hope to do next week.
right?
But yeah,
Yeah. Well, and we're going to have to, I think Laurie mentioned postcards as well.
So our postcard is done. I have a draft form, which came back from the printer today. It looks great. It has a ton of information on it. We've combined forces with the Village of North Bennington, the Village School of North Bennington, and the North Bennington Graded School District. It talks about balloting. It talks about where you can find the reports. It talks about where you can find the reports online, how you can get one if you want a hard copy, and what the voting is going to look like for the North Bennington Graded School District, how that's going to occur, where it's going to occur, and people to call if you have any questions. It looks really good, and I think it's really thorough. And I'd be happy to send you a copy of that draft.
I would be happy to see it.
But I just
And,
it's been a little crazy.
Hey, that's fine. You're way ahead of the curve as far as I'm concerned. You've
Yeah.
the one been bringing it up
impressed.
and engaging us on this topic, and I do certainly appreciate it. I know things will work out. It's just the money is a drain because it's not just a little bit. It's a lot.
And it wasn't
Extra money.
anticipated.
Yep. Okay, so I'll move on to the rest of listening to Kate or Renee, whichever
So why
wishes
don't
to
we,
go
the
first.
part with Renee may go on. So what, do you want to have Kate go first?
That's fine. Probably makes
Kate, are
more
you re-
sense.
Yeah, that way we don't have to keep her, if the questions about food service and assessment go longer, we can dismiss Kate and not keep her here all night. So,
Yeah.
so why don't we frame the question, Renee?
Yeah. So Ray, your question, requesting reevaluation or change in methodology of how the assessments are being calculated for early childhood special education
Mhm.
and pre-K. The question that you had earlier, asking if one is included in the other, and that is, I had to rely on Kate and she said no. So
Okay.
they are counted separately.
They're
They are
separately.
coded separately. So the figures that I shared with how the data that I've been pulling out of the equalized pupil files for ADM and using that as the basis to continue the methodology that has been utilized in the past for calculating those two assessments, which is the 2-year
Yeah,
ADM
it's-
average.
Sorry if I interrupt you for a second. You know, it's
It's okay.
still not clear to me what exactly that calculation is. I would be much happier if I could actually see the step-by-step and where the data is pulled from. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, I shared that in an email that I sent to you, and I think I copied Matt and Kim on it as well. So they were snapshots of the ADM for
Yeah, I
the
saw
SVSU.
those. I saw those and I responded, pointing out that the numbers in those charts did not correspond to the numbers in the FYI for those years. And it makes a considerable difference to a small district, whether it's 5 or 6% or it's 9%,
Right. So
9 and change, actually.
what I
9,
can
6, 9 or so was what it was.
Yeah, what I can say to that, Ray, is that the methodology has been consistent over the years, and I've continued the methodology that was utilized before I
Yeah,
started
well,
in this
I'm
position.
not saying you didn't. I'm just saying that I think it's time to think about this, because it actually, you know, the real issue, aside from sorting out, which you just did, that there are two different streams here. One is for pre-K education, non-special ed, and one is for the special ed part of early education. That's helpful. But what I am saying is, in fact, the data doesn't seem to be consistent between what's reported to board members in the FYI and what the state is saying, showing in its charts. It's considerably different. I mean, in terms of, for us, it's a very significant difference.
Would it help Renee to
And
review kind of?
when I look at the actual numbers, which are not unusual for us to have two, one the year before last year was unusual to have 6. And if I go back further, I've looked at some of the earlier FYIs that I found in my detritus that I'm trying to get rid of here, of paper. You know, 1 or 2 or 0 are all numbers that occur for us in this area. 6 was quite unusual. And then that disappeared because 3 of them left to go to kindergarten. And then the 3 that were there in triple E3 morphed into 2 this year at triple
It's
E4.
just a snapshot in time. So essentially, the state is using
Well,
that
it's a snapshot of October, you know, the 40-week
census.
count. Yeah.
Yep.
But
Right. So that's the data that we've used. Is just that
yeah,
snapshot.
but that's not the data that appears in those charts from the state. It's quite different. It says it gives our data perfectly. It doesn't give the SVUSD data perfectly. It shorts them. They're a number down, like, so for 2020, the actual number of students reported on the FYIs were 68, and the number that appears in the SVUSD account for on the chart is 5843. And then for 20, this past October, the number in the FYI is 71, and the number on the chart is 66.38. those don't seem like they're huge numbers. They're not, but it's a small pool. They make a lot of difference because that means that the percentage that goes to SBUESD is about 3 or 4% less than it should be. Actually, more than that, I think it is. But it's should be about 6% to 9% for us. So not from 9 that it shows on the just straight line comparison down to about 5-4%. That's considerable difference for us. So I think there's an inaccuracy in the data count, and that makes up part of it. The rest of it is that, you know, it seems, I don't know exactly how it works because it's not clear to me. That's not a calculation. That's just a bunch of charts. And I don't know exactly what the grinder, the algorithm is. That's why I'm saying I think I would like to see the actual steps of the calculation and where that data comes from. The data seems to be inaccurate, and then I don't actually understand because there's a reference to K through 3 numbers, and I don't know how they're factored in. I remember this from years ago talking to Rick about it, and he never gave me a very good, I'm not sure he understood it, though he was kind enough to tell me about that, but I never saw the calculation.
So I can speak to the procedural part because early childhood special education and preschool, it's some of our most fluctuating numbers because of the way the regulations are about how we have to provide services to children. So unlike, you know, preschool, if you hit the age qualifier for preschool, you usually enroll in the fall and go for the whole year typically, unless you move in part year, but that's very minor, small numbers. Early childhood special education, the eligibility begins at the 3rd birthday. So if you started, you know, the year and you were 2 in early intervention and your 3rd birthday is in November, you're eligible for early childhood special education services in November as of the date of your birthday. And so what happens is each year, kind of as Ray alluded to, we have a number of students that move on to kindergarten in June. So our June is our highest number. So our number of students with IEPs in June this year will be up about 128 to 130, but we started the year around 80. So we have approximately 40 to 55 students that move in over the course of the year.
You're talking about, these are all pre-K kids or triple E kids, yeah.
They're early childhood special education students.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're saying there's 128 at the end of the year.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the projection for this year.
Right.
So I can give you a little.
But right now there's only 71, the last count I saw. So.
Yeah.
73.
Yeah. So we start low.
And it grows.
We start low and we end high. And that's every year. So because of the way the eligibility rules are, we gradually increase in number as early intervention sends their children up to us, to the school district each year. So they hit their 3rd birthday and they're suddenly ours. To think about, there's eligibility criteria. And so basically if they're receiving a 1 plan and services as well, or if they have a medical diagnosis and are looking to have a developmental delay or a medical diagnosis that's going to cause a developmental delay, they will qualify for early childhood special education. So we start this process 6 months before the child even turns 3. So we really ramp up in the 45 days before that child turns 3, but we don't own that child until their 3rd birthday. And that's when they come into our census. Right. So then how are they reported? Because I agree with you, Ray, that it's tricky. A lot of different categories of young children. You have children who are just receiving services, children who are attending pre-K, children who are attending pre-K and receiving services in their pre-K. So the Agency of Education uses our student information system to collect all this information. It's called Infinite Campus. When a child enrolls and they're enrolled at the point at which either they turn 3 and they start receiving services for our early childhood special education learners, or they're eligible for pre-K, one or the other. they are entered into the Infinite Campus system, and they're coded based on the kind of student they happen to be. So there's a different number assigned to the student. So the student record's only entered once. Based on what kind of services and supports that student receives and where they receive them, they're given a particular code. And this is an example or a snapshot of the code book of how we assign to the individual learner. So if the learner is going to attend a just only related services and they don't attend a pre-K, they're given a 24. But there's 9 different codes. So if they're attending pre-K and services, they would be given a different code, but it ensures that each child is only counted once in the count. And that point I made earlier around every year, we start with a smaller number of students in the fall because we just graduate the kindergartners and grow to the largest possible in the spring. This is our data since 2013-14. You can see as it's our lowest point in the year. In 2013-14, we had only less than 30 students. That same school year, we had 19 found eligible coming in from early intervention or referred for special education, and we served 48. So we went from 29 to 48 in 1 year. This year, or last year, 19-20, we started at 61 and we exited at 101.
Yep.
And we served
Okay.
90. Now within that,
I grant you it's variable, but the state rules for counting students are that October census. And I would wager that the proportions are more or less the same about where they come from. Right?
so they take that October census, and I know that I don't want to, I want to be careful here because this is pretty technical, but in the past, if we've had a child that might not have submitted their full registration packet and they didn't get counted, but we know they're your student, we'll submit additional students that came up over the course of the year in the spring recount.
Right.
So I do believe, and this is a Brad James question, not a Kate Abbott question, that they do that they weight the amount of time the child's in program. I do believe that that's the case. So I don't think that that October collection isn't the be all and end all, because they do take information after that.
Right. I'm just saying the state law is that the October number is the number, but it's clear that if they're somehow factoring in K through 3 numbers into this, there's something else going on. And I just would like to understand it. But none of what you've said disabuses me of the idea that the number that is being used is probably inaccurate for us, because I bet you that most of those kids, you retain pretty much a similar proportion of North Bennington kids to the rest of the SVUSD kids. And at any rate, those aren't the numbers that actually determine this particular budget. So to me, I think you're throwing a lot of information at me, which might be useful to understand, but it's not to the point of why the allocation is the way it is. The allocation is the way it is because of certain numbers that are taken in October, basically, and they probably have some other weighting factors they throw in there. And what I'm trying to understand is why we spend $40,000 per pupil in that program this year.
So
as
I can't
opposed
quote you
to
the
$12,000 for SVUSD.
So Renee just in the texted and said she has an unstable connection, so I'm going to do my best at this.
Okay.
And
And that's
I'm
why
not
my
math.
camera is off too. I'm
Yeah,
unstable,
no.
so I've
Okay.
turned my camera
Okay.
off.
I'm here.
I'm sorry, Renee.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah,
'Cause
no, I
it's the
can
two-year
talk. I
average,
just,
right?
yeah.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Um,
So I think in what we talked about earlier today, using the 2-year average kind of is what has been done to
create some
not have huge
stability.
I've got
fluctuations.
that, but if I take the
Yep.
2-year average, I get the same results, basically.
So Ray, I think what we need to do then is for me to sit down with our data team, because the data that or the date and time that they're taking or pulling the information out of Infinite Campus to generate the enrollment reports may not necessarily align with that fall census. So I think Marcia normally pulls on the first day of the month, which may not necessarily always match up. So just historically, I've tried to maintain that some stability in using the same data set year after year after year.
Right.
So there is consistency.
That makes sense. But these FYIs that I'm looking at are dated 11/1/2019 and 11/2/2020. So they're clearly related to the actual census date.
And I'm sorry, I can't speak to it because it's not coming from anything that I control within the business office. But I can certainly review that with our tech department.
Well, I assume that they're getting.
Do you have a
accurate
number, Ray,
information.
that you think it should be?
What?
Do you have a number that you think it should be if you think this number is wrong?
I think my kids shouldn't cost any more than the kids that SVUSD pays for. Basically. Because I don't, this may be something I don't understand about the program, but I know that they don't have IEPs at this point. They definitely have needs, and those needs are different and variable depending on the kid. I understand that. But it's not like they have an individual education plan at this point in their lives. They just have needs, and they're falling short of where their peers are, right?
They actually do all have IEPs. It's the same exact regulation as if they were 6, except it's a different category. They're considered developmental delay instead of one of the categories of the 6 through 21.
That's a different category from the IEP categories because there are a number of those beyond that.
But they do have an IEP and they do have IEP services. They're just early childhood special education.
They wouldn't get the services without the IEP.
Okay. So are you quantifying each individual child in terms of cost?
In terms of the cost, no, I've taken the data from the equalized pupil file that we get annually from the Agency of Education. And that is the data that I've used to generate, to check out the assessment.
That's a red herring then to say that they have IEPs because it's irrelevant to the actual cost distribution, which was my point.
You asked if they were on IEP, did they have IEPs? The answer was that they do.
Sorry, I'm finishing my thought here. I understood it was a developmental delay category and not the whole panoply of categories that you get in the IEP section from K up. But what I meant was that, in fact, you don't segregate the expenses out by individual to build the individual districts. It's a more general calculation, right?
Correct. We're looking at the early education, special education department as a whole and breaking that out, yes, proportionately by the average over the 2 years.
That's perfectly reasonable at that point in time. But what I don't think is reasonable is the costs I see being charged to this district. And I don't know whether I assume that the tech department gets reasonably accurate data because they get it from early childhood, I would think. And that's what leads me to ask these questions. So I don't know that we can go any further with this discussion because we're dealing with some calculations which aren't in evidence here. I mean, the data that Renee sent me is great to see, but I have an inconsistency with that data just from what information I'm able to glean from public record in our board meetings, basically. And I don't see the rationale for this rather large disparity. 41 plus $1,000 for our two kids this year versus about 12 for kids in SVUSD who are in the same program. That's insane.
So I don't want to get into the math domain because I don't, that's not my domain. But
Right.
when I looked at the initial spreadsheet you guys were looking at, you had 2 students in the 1 year and then 6 students in the other year. So I
Yep.
don't, the way I read that is that you were being, the average of those 2 years is what you were billed. So it wasn't being, while you have 2 students this year, or you had 2 at the census, you have
No,
3 now.
that's correct. But what I pointed out was the numbers for North Bennington are correct, assuming that the 6 is correct. And the 2 are correct as reported. They agree between the FYI and the data from the state. But what I point out is that the SVUESD data does not jive with the FYI. It's considerably different. And that's where the big discrepancy comes in. If you were using the FYI data and that was accurately reported, and that was the accurate data to report, and the state was using that, there would be a quite different number. It wouldn't be that North Bennington was responsible for 9.02 or 9.69% of the cost. It would be more like 5 to 6%. And that is considerable margin of difference for us.
Gonna give it another shot to see if I'm still unstable. My whole family's home and we're fighting for bandwidth.
Well, your fan's moving and I could see your mouth moving, so.
But right, I can assure you that there's nothing behind these numbers that are intentional to try to make North Bennington pay more. I can assure you of that.
I'm not making that accusation. I'm just saying
Okay.
I am, and I don't think it's right because it doesn't appear to me it's justified. So I want to see some reasonable way of figuring out this that but brings these two numbers, brings the difference down to something that makes sense to me. And maybe that's just a better set of calculations to show it, but it seems to me it's way too far apart for that. Now, it's clear to me if we had, because the number 41,012, it's about 3.5 times. So if we had 3.5 times the number of students this year, which would put us at 7, then we'd be more or less in the ballpark, but we're not there. I know it's a 2-year average and we did have 6 last year, but even when I did that calculation, it's, well, I said, I'm not looking at the little analysis I sent you, which shows the difference, but it comes down to about 5 to 6% of the total cost, not 9%. That's a 50% increase. And I'm not buying that, it's just not right. So it's got to be worked out and corrected from my perspective. It matters to our budget. It's a heck of a lot of money.
It matters to everyone's budget, Ray. So we're not,
Yeah, I know
we're
that.
not disputing that it doesn't matter,
I
but
know that. And I know, I've looked
we
at
have
the
been-
total for SVUSD. It's $900,000+. That's a huge amount. But it's divided over 71 students. At least at the point, that was 2020, November of 2020, right? Okay, well, I think this is done because I don't think anybody has any new ideas about it at the moment.
other than we will continue to look at this as we have.
Okay,
and respond to your
All right.
requests. We're committed to, we may not agree, but we are committed to continue to look at it.
Yep.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Kate.
You get,
I do appreciate your telling me about all the changes. You have an incredibly complicated job dealing with these kids and their movements and their issues, which are very real. And I do feel like you and your staff do, and the staff of the centers where kids are, they do a good job with them. Appreciate that. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. And Village School is one of our partners too.
Yep.
One of our valued partners.
And Lori is one of your spokespersons who you call on to defend the program too. And I appreciate that because she's very good at that. So
Okay,
Renee, do you want to talk
wanna
about the
frame the
rest of
next-
our budget? Sorry, Jim. Sorry, what?
No, I was asking Renee the same thing you were. She
Yeah,
wants
okay.
to frame the next question.
Yeah.
I think the tuition question that you posed with regard to the assessment duplication, I reached out to the agency and
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
per statute, his recommendation to me he's the finance manager that I spoke with, but he was reaching out and running it up the chain to Brad James as well as Emily Simmons, I believe her name is, AOE legal counsel. To see, number one, if there are other issues like this that have been raised in other SUs across the state. But he said per statute, and in looking at, per statute, we can only offer one tuition rate for everyone. Right. And we cannot offer a discount, because if we offered a discount, then it would have to be offered to everyone. And then he checked what they refer to as the stat book. So there's an annual data collection of expenditures and revenues. And in that guideline, assessments are to be included, as you've mentioned in the past, like it's allowable to be included in the tuition calculation.
Yeah, no, I know all that.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So from his perspective, he didn't think that there should be a change, even though, I think I maybe turned a light bulb on, like, oh, you know what, maybe this is an issue that we haven't addressed properly. And we've also reached out to our legal counsel who's looking into it as well. So I do not have an answer.
Yeah, we don't have a definitive answer from Dina, but we did express it, what you brought to us for her.
I truly,
she is aware of the state's position.
I really do appreciate that you worked on this, because that was my concern, that it got looked into it. And I realized, thinking about this last night when I was rewriting my points so that they would be more coherent, that because of the legal definition of what the allowable or the per pupil allowable tuition rate is, it's very difficult to deal with this, because those costs are definitely allowable. I pointed that out as well in that tuition calculation and the rate calculation. And the fact is, because the SVUESD has on their budget, they have a number, that's their assessment, and that's an accurate number for them. And our tuition comes in, it has money that is there because of the cost of those assessments, but it doesn't go to those assessments. It goes in, as I said, it goes into the local revenue, and that reduces the total budget amount that's subject to property taxation. And so the categories don't match up. Their assessment's correct, their tuition rates correct, unless they wanted to alter it, and then they would have to do it for every outside sending district. And we'll assume that our assessments are correct. And so if you start altering any of those things, things get thrown out of kilter because the thing's a double entry system and it has to have balances, balancing entries. So the only way to do it, and legally at this point, is for them to reduce their tuition. And, you know, I may consider asking them, but I really don't expect them to accept it.
I think the challenge rate is exactly what you said, that it'd be reduced for everyone, like, because
Yeah.
we do have students from Sanford and
Yep.
Greensboro often
Yep.
coming down, so then they would get
Right. They would get the benefit that I would get.
They would get the benefit,
Right.
right.
Yeah, and they wouldn't be entitled to it, really, you know,
Right.
from
we did
anybody's
ask-
point of view.
We specifically asked one of the things, like, so, all right, can we have one tuition rate, but then give some type of rebate back to
Yeah,
members who, SVSU members, and you heard Renee explain that they wouldn't allow that under current statute.
no, you create all sorts of issues because somebody's got to come up with the money to go back to us, or either it's not taken in the first place, which is the cleanest way, or it has to come back. And those transfers are just like, what are you doing? Where is it coming from and where's it going to? It's not possible to do it as far as I can tell, and do it legally and cleanly for accounting purposes as it's structured. I think the only way to deal with it is to ask the legislature to figure out a fix. One of those little fix-it bills that they do to correct a mistake, because this has got to be happening all over the state, because every sending district is in an SU and they're going to get assessed unless they have worked out that at the SU level, they're getting assessed. And if they're sending to schools that are part of the SU, the same problem comes up. So I thank you for checking into it. And based on my thinking about it last night, I responded that, you know, basically it's not an SU problem. It's not an SVSU problem for the board. It's a problem between SVUSD and North Bennington. And I really can't see, you know, it's almost, I think I should write them a letter and ask about it, but I don't expect them to vote for it. So thank you for doing that. And I appreciate your responses, because they confirm what I thought as I worked through this and finished up my letter last night. Okay, so that leaves us with the budget itself, or do you want to talk about food service for a bit, or and then go to the budget?
We can talk about food service, because we've spent a lot of time trying to work that question too. And I'll defer to Renee, but she can make the announcement what we would like to do.
Okay. Well, I'm all ears. I have no thoughts about this, except that I'd like it to happen.
Well, I mean, the simple answer is that the village schools got to apply to be a member of the food service group, right? So not your committee, the village school trustees have to apply for it. And then what we've been instructed that it's not Renee's decision, it's not my decision, because it could have a financial impact to the rest of the SU. The other boards have to vote to let you in, because there could be a reduction in an impact on how the community wealth is calculated. So we think we have, but there's a real tight timeline clock going, but Renee and I discussed a solution. So this is where I'll turn it over to Renee.
Okay.
So I reached out. Right now, we are in the middle of a request for proposals for
Yep.
a food service management company
Yep.
because we're in our 4th renewal year of our existing contract. I reached out to Michael Carr, who is one of the contracts consultants for the child nutrition program for the agency, asking him, is it possible for us to include this in our current RFP? Because we have, I want to say probably 7, 8, or 9 potential bidders right now. And his response back to me was, sure, yeah, I mean, you can look at it, but you have to, work out the legal issues first. And then there's all these other documents that we have to include in the RFP. And we're in the window right now where the bidders have submitted their questions and we have to have addenda issued by Friday.
Okay.
So Amanda reached out to Tim today to get access to some of the information. So she started to work on that. And as that was happening, an informational email came out from the state saying that the USDA has granted a waiver for school food authorities that are in their 5th year of a contract, a waiver to extend it for 1 more year. So we're trying to figure out, are we going to plow through and continue on this process, or should we hit the pause button and explore the legal issues to actually be able to incorporate the village school if that's something that the trustees want to ask the SU to consider. So we're kind of,
If without the pause, there's no way it would happen, because just the requirement that we would need to get board approval, it just wouldn't happen by the time we would have to put the RFP out there.
Right. But do they
I
not?
mean, it would help. If we extended 1 year, it also gives us another year to see what happens as we merge Arlington and Sandgate. So from my perspective,
That's
it's not a bad thing, but for those who have put a lot of work into the RFP already, then that's going to get tossed. And I think both whoever was bidding were all set to act on it. So, but it's what's best for the SU. It's not what's best for bidders. I try to be mindful of it, but it's really what comes on best for us and all our students. So.
Yeah, I just have to throw this in there, but it includes a non-SU member, of course, currently.
Yep.
In Sacred Heart.
Yep.
Which I don't mind them being there. It's just like, okay, fine. But the village school should be there as well, I believe. So.
And I would like to know, did the other boards vote to include Sacred Heart?
We have no idea. This predates both of us. Yeah.
Yeah,
back.
this was, it got put together by someone in the past, and that's all.
It may not have been voted. Yeah, it might not have been voted by the boards, but it doesn't mean that it stopped the process. But I know that now I have legal counsel telling me that I need to take it to the boards to vote. So I feel obligated. I can't cut the deal.
Right. No, I figured that. I figured that, I believe that we have to, the village school has to be invited in, they have to ask, and then they have to be invited in, basically. So, but I think there are really good arguments in terms of equity to do that. And I haven't examined the finances carefully, but as long as it stays break even for everybody and their children are getting free food, then I think it's doable.
I mean, we only have preliminary numbers, but I think there is the challenge you're gonna have, that there could be a financial impact to the program because of the calculated wealth of North Bennington joining our food service group, then having an impact on revenue to the program.
Yeah, I understand that, but Sacred Heart's poverty level is far below North Bennington's.
I agree.
And they're a member.
As I said, I agree. I'm not objecting to North Bennington coming in. I'm just telling you what the reality.
Okay.
the challenge you may find is that someone will say like, well, they're going to ask for Renee, what is this going to cost?
I know,
food
I know
service
that's what they're
program?
gonna ask, and,
Yeah.
and they're within their rights to do it, for sure.
Yeah.
But
And
I
you
would
may have
think-
others ask, then why is Sacred Heart in there? You know, because that certainly, we have certainly heard that in the past 2 weeks as we've
Yeah,
discussed this, which,
but
you know,
I
but
understand
then
that,
there's
but
me
you
that
know,
says, I want all kids to eat. So, you know,
and USDA wants all the kids to eat, which
Yeah.
is where that openness comes from. So
Yeah.
also they've got a lot of commodities they want to sell us too. To
So
put the economic part of it in there.
My quick question would be, so what is the next step? Should I talk to my board about asking for permission, or are we still in sort of a holding
I think that would,
pattern at this point?
well, I would go ahead and do that, Tim, and have your,
Yep.
have your board of trustees do that.
Mhm.
And we're gonna have to make a decision real soon whether we're gonna seek an extension. I'll tell you that I feel that we should give an extension and then give the time to try and get you in, and also then we won't have to do Arlington as a separate addendum to the RFP. It could be part of next year's RFP. Everybody could be in it. So I'm in favor of going for an extension, but you know, it wasn't clear from the state, Renee, right? Would you agree? I mean, like, they would prefer that we move forward, but would understand why we would want this waiver.
The indication was that we have every right to request the waiver, but they may be inclined to decline it because we are so far along in the process.
Yep.
Just to
Stated
put it
better
in-
than I would have. Thank you.
Just to put
And
it
the
in
waiver
perspective,
is for what? Sorry, I misplaced that term. So
To extend our current food service management
Okay.
contract that we're
Yep.
currently under for one more year.
yeah, all right.
I just love,
Tim-
Renee, that you got 9 bids. We got a singular bid when we did this whole process. Just
Right.
Yeah,
Because we are a
last go
small
round, last go round, we only got 2, but I
Mhm.
think
2,
because
yeah.
the structure is changing, like it's
Mhm.
going to be a per plate structure to the contract now. And I don't know if the agency, the Child Nutrition Program, has been drumming up interest, but for whatever reason, they said, you know, at the outset, you can expect to have a lot more interest
Wow.
in this RFP. So
So
Yeah,
I guess
I was
my-
surprised too, Tim.
No,
Very
that's
surprised.
impressive. I guess my one question, and I'm just concerned that us asking this would potentially get Sacred Heart kicked out. And so I just want to ask, is there any
I don't think that-
possibility that would happen? Because I don't want us asking and then them going, well, why is Sacred Heart? And we don't want the village school and we don't want Sacred Heart in because they're not public schools.
I don't think we could kick somebody out, but I could be wrong. I mean, they're in. I don't know what grounds we would use for removing them.
So
Renee seems to be nodding her head. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I know that the USDA does not discriminate in that way. They're open to the
Yeah.
issue is basically the
Okay.
poverty
That, I
numbers,
just
right?
don't want to lose it
mean-
for somebody else by us asking the question.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I got you.
My question would be like, who else may say, well, if you're opening it up to the village school, why, I don't know who else is in our catchment area that would say like, well, why aren't you offering it to us too? So, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
know which of all the independent schools have
I don't
food service
think any of
programs
them
or
have
not.
food service besides us.
Yeah.
Not, I know Highland Hall and South Shore don't.
Those I know don't, but
Yep.
I wasn't sure
I
about
don't know
Grace
about
Christian or
Grace.
not. Yeah.
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 And whatever. So anyway,
'Cause that would be my only like, how did Sacred Heart get in? They were in before you, right? Were even independent school districts. So I guess, I could see that, but we certainly don't want to be in a position that looks like we're picking and choosing. So we may have to say it would have to be open to everybody in our catchment area that does have a food service. But I sit here today without knowing for sure if that's accurate, that
Yeah.
everybody does or does not.
so I presume that North Bennington was in that group before we changed operationally.
That's what I
because we were
understand. Jim.
food service. I mean, we provided food and it came
Yep.
from Abby. And so, obviously there's a change there, and it was precipitated by our
My advice to
change
Tim
and
would
other
be
things.
have your trustees vote for it, and it's sitting on the shelf then, whether it's immediate or because as we're going to move forward and try and get you in as an addendum, but that's a huge lift and probably won't happen. But that if we get the extension, then you're there. You have it waiting.
Yeah, no, that sounds fine. We'll go forward with that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So,
And I think that's all I have, Ray. I mean, I'm here to, answer whatever I can on the budget, although, we didn't make many changes
Yep.
besides tuition and the assessment, so.
let's see, you sent me, I really didn't get through the second version you sent me today and to see where it had changed. So could you describe what changed
Very,
between
very minor
Small,
adjustments, yes.
that was just an equalized pupil change?
Correct.
So it's on the tax side, it's not in the,
Right.
actual
There was a
figures on the budget.
small, I want to say 2/100ths increase on the elementary side, and then a small, I think, decrease on the Mount Anthony side. So
Okay,
very,
and-
very, very minor.
and do you have you've previous years you've shared with me the that actual calculation of the equalized pupil. I forget what it looks like. It's kind of linear graph, linear set of columns, like columnar thing.
Mhm.
Yep. And if you've got information on what the poverty, well, that shows the poverty adjustment, right? Yep.
Does the file that Brad sent out today didn't have all of his background data, though it just
Mhm.
had, I'm just trying to pull it up here. It just had, I think, FY21 ADM tab and then the equalized pupil calculation, but I think the weights are on that. Would you like, I can share my screen, I believe, if you would like me to do that so you can actually see it. It's a lot
Well,
of numbers.
actually,
and
you
it's
could
really
just
small.
ship me that screen
Okay.
if you've got chance.
Sure.
I don't think it matters at the moment. I think the question for us is looking at the where the drivers of the increase in our budget are. If you can talk about those for the board.
Well, really, it's those two things that we've adjusted. The tuition, projected tuition rates. Announced tuition is due to the state by Friday. So we should be able to refine those numbers. I'm not sure about the independent schools, if they have a different time frame that they have to provide, what they're anticipating for their tuitions next year. It would be lovely if we, knew, so then we could really, dial those numbers in to make them more
Right.
accurate.
Well, for South Shore, it's just whatever the average announced rate is for elementary. But Highland Hall, they will make a small adjustment, probably within that 3.5% margin on what they're receiving now. They've always been very frugal about their cost increases. So Meg Cottom said that it would be that in that kind of range. So.
Okay. And just I was in the MAU meeting earlier. Representative Dave Durfee had noted they in a committee with the tax commissioner today that the state is at this point, preliminary, they were looking at a 3.75% increase for next year.
Yeah.
But again, that was based on preliminary data collections. It's not on
Okay.
the budgets that we have set, which
Okay.
from our districts, I think that number hopefully will come down some. So hopefully the 3.5% that I've included in your budget should be sufficient, I hope.
Okay. And then a lot of the assessments, the smaller assessments to the SU have actually declined, but administration has gone up by $4,100.
Mhm.
And I didn't get a chance to look back at the SVSU budget number on that. That includes my recollection is that there was a separation of administration and legal services there, but they're combined in our administration budget, right?
They
Legal.
are included, yes.
Yeah, right. And then we've also got the public information person, and that's in the administration, right?
Correct.
And the equity coordinator, that's in the administration.
That's
Grant
actually
funded.
a grant funded position. We
Oh,
got
that's
that
grant
approved.
funded. Okay, so it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. But at any rate, so I guess that accounts for, you've got some administrative people coming from BVSU that are now part of the SU, right? Or going to be. Is that right? That's part of, and plus salary changes, right?
Right.
That accounts for that. That's I forget what the percentage is. It's a large percentage, actually, fairly large. But the real big changes in assessments are down in special education and in pre-K and in triple E. Those are the biggest ones, in addition to the ones that we have in our tuition budget for SVUESD and Highland, not Highland Hall so much, but South Shire. Part of the problem with South Shire is that last year the budget misstated what we should have had for them, and so now we've recouped that difference, and in both number of students and in actual tuition rate, and so it creates a fair increase. And this is one of the questions up for discussion, I think, is because the numbers for Highland Hall and South Shire, I just left. I did adapt a little bit for the fact that they have some sixth graders leaving, but I figured that, there were two of them in total, and I only took one out because I figured that they're going to find someone else coming in at the lower end to fill in those gaps. And then, so the real question for us is the village school number. And I put that in as 110, and I don't know if that's accurate because I think you already have some changes from October in this year, and those are probably staying with us for a few years. And then I just kept an increase of 3.5%. So we need to have a conversation with Tim about that, and hopefully he's going to provide us some data maybe at our next meeting when we have to make this decision. So.
Yeah, I'll have the final information from us next week after my board meeting, and then we typically meet the following Monday or Tuesday night to do that final go through, and I think you guys end up signing on Tuesday or Wednesday morning.
You're talking about us or them or your board?
My board gives me leeway to make that decision, and then you
Okay,
guys
right.
end up having to meet and sign the final number. And I think we can do that Tuesday morning. That would be, let me pull up my calendar.
Next Tuesday morning?
No, the following Tuesday morning.
Okay, right.
Because then I think Lori needs everything that.
Yeah, the
that
22nd,
Wednesday,
we have to be done.
Yeah. So I think we
Yes.
can make that work.
But we have to set that, we have to have a document to sign at that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, so so
Ray,
I
the
don't know
only
what
other,
else to say at the moment, right?
yeah, we have in the special education assessment, if we can go back to the SVSU board and have them
Yeah.
reconsider, we could have a reduction there because we had an incoming kindergartner that we were anticipating who has,
Yeah.
Kate was able to confirm that they have moved. So
Right.
that wouldn't have to be included in
Yep,
the budget
so
that we
they moved
currently have.
into Shaftesbury Town as opposed to our District 1.
Correct.
Yep. So I'm looking at that budget, which I sent around to everybody last night, and Renee sent it too. So you probably have 2 copies of it. So special ed services, case 6, going up 39,000 almost, which is a 37.5% change. The administration is really a small increase. And I guess this year we have a new case manager whom I haven't met, but Tim certainly has. And then the SPED for early childhood program is going up. Well, this of course is an issue in discussion, but in terms of just the continuation from last year, it's up $9,300, 11%. And of course, we don't know how many students that will end up being, but this year at the moment there are 2. So those are the total down at the bottom of the sheet. The first page sheet shows you the change in special ed services, preschool tuition, which is another increase. That's for pre-K. And yeah, well, that's the pre-K plus the early childhood special ed. And then our the other big driver is in our tuition increases. Adds up to $97,436 or 3.65%, which from what Renee just said, sounds like it's right in line with what's showing up for the state everywhere on average. But if you go back up, you look at fiscal services actually went down a little bit. Tech administration went down $4,300. HR went down $42. It's not a very large amount anyway. The audit stayed the same because that's on a 3-year contract still, or this is the last year of the contract, I guess, probably. Treasurer, we didn't add anything for. If Mary wants something, she should let me know. And then administration went up 4168. Everything in the board is left the same at the moment. Contingency is the same as it has been. Down the contingency, and then if you look down at sinking fund, building maintenance. 5431 is the line item or the item number. That's the same. We could alter that to try to pull some of our costs down a little bit. And then if you look at the income side, you will see that if you look at fund balance 41,991, that's up in the income side, revenue side. You know, last year we had a huge fund balance, 221,000. This year we have our usual drop to a trough of 45,000. And that creates part of our increase in effect, especially for taxes, because the state support grant has to go up 10% to accommodate 10.5%. So that's in a nutshell. I'd invite you all to look at the spreadsheet. And if you put it into Google Sheets, you'll get an interactive feature. There'll be little triangles on certain items so you can see the detail behind the number. And Tim, did I send this to you, the spreadsheet? I should.
No, you did not.
Send it to you, sorry. Or Renee could send it to you right now, I suppose, maybe, but. Any rate, it's kind of a tough situation. Big increase because of because the fund balance isn't there to soften the increases that you expect anyway. And although our student numbers have gone up, I don't know what the actual equalized pupil amount is. And I was concerned about last year, the poverty rate that they had for us reduced the amount of increase in our equalized pupil rate due to poverty students. And I'm concerned about that again, because they caught that number at a low point last year. And I don't know where it is this year. So I would appreciate knowing what you know, Tim, about cert rates, particularly around the end of the year, December, because I believe that's what they take and put into the calculations. Am I right about that, Renee? The cert rate is from December that they use for calculating the add-on factors for poverty?
I would suspect so, because but I don't know for certain, but by statute, they're supposed to have equalized pupils to us in mid-December. So it would make sense that that would be the rate that they're using.
Yep.
But the file that I got today from Brad said not final on it.
Yeah, well, it's never final till later in January.
Much later.
Despite statute. So we have a meeting next week. I don't know if we're going to be able to put this to bed exactly then, but hopefully we will. I may tinker with it a little bit, and if any of you have suggestions, or I don't know, maybe we kind of a Zoom. Well, I can't advertise a Zoom meeting if we're not warning it, but you could talk to me directly, email, and I could suggest new scenarios as I've done in the past for Renee to produce for us.
So you want another meeting one for next week, Ray?
Yes, I do.
What day and time?
Well, we had set it up as a series of 3, one of which we didn't have. So the
we
20th.
Haven't warned anything yet. So
yeah, no, I know you haven't. You wouldn't have warned it yet, but the 20th. And I
what
believe
time?
same time, I believe, unless there's objection. I don't see any.
Yeah.
The,
So we have an MAU board meeting that same night, so
Oh,
you'll
you
probably be
do,
on your
so-
own. Yeah,
okay. Well, if you can set it up for me, I can run the meeting.
yeah, I can set it up. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
thank you.
no problem.
And if
So
we can have
6:30 on the
Renee,
20th.
Renee will be at the MAU meeting probably, will you?
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
because they're finalizing their budget that night.
okay, so hopefully we'll come up with something, and we'll have to wait for Tim to produce what he wants to produce for us, what he's been producing for us, so that we can see what's going on there. And anyway, the last item on the agenda then, moving on, is the two sort of building projects we have for next summer. I sent you my draft project proposal on the EMP work to finish up the cornice painting, to cover over the paint that probably has lead in it, encapsulate it. And I'm working on getting the well, let me speak to the roof project. I had asked for a little assistance from Centerline, but then I ended up getting a proposal that was more grand than I was willing to pay for and believe that we need. So I had a conversation with Gary, a very nice conversation. He explained. I explained my position. He explained his, and we're fine. He just gave me the. I have a couple of thumb drives that have the plans on them and scans of the old plans, which is good for us to have instead of having to find and pull out the sheaf of blueprints. And we'll move on, see what else comes down the pike that we have to do in the future. And so I've written a description using the template that Renee had sent me, previously used by the, what school was that for, Renee? Do you remember? Was that Shaftesbury or?
I don't know. I'm so far
Oh,
out
okay.
of like construction right now
Yeah,
and
right,
budget
okay.
that
At any rate, maybe I should check with Jerry Prue. He would know. I would
you know
think.
that's probably the most recent one we did, which was Monument.
Okay, right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And well, do you remember it? Do you and Jim remember it well enough to tell me why it's specified a 25-year warranty, for a roof that is 0.060 thick? They went for that. The Firestone, you can get you can get less than 20 years, or you can get 20, or you can get 25. And I think they have some stringent conditions on the 25 in terms of using Firestone products underneath, as well as the Firestone rubber on top. Everything would be supplied by Firestone.
It's usually proprietary that to get the warranty, it's all the same.
Yeah, it's all their
proprietary,
stuff,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, I've had conversation, I talked to Gary about it when I was talking to him about the proposal. And I've sort of thought about it myself, and I'm saying, what are you going to get out of a warranty if you're between 20 and 25? That makes it worth
prorated.
the extra money. Yeah. I would think it might be more interesting if we could see what going up to 0.090 would do for longevity. And I don't know what it would do for the cost, but we could ask for an alternate on that. That's what I was thinking. To price it at 0.060 and price it also at 0.090 and see if that produced a longer warranty that we could, or even if it didn't produce a longer warranty, it was likely to have more longevity. So what do you think? Should I write it that way or just write it as the 060, which, and ask for a 20-year warranty? Well, it sounds like I'm going to determine that. So. But,
Ray, I think it's fine. Let's not get into the weeds here. I think that, as we discussed before, just go for the 060 and 20 and not try to do all that.
Right.
That's we got to move on, and we got to get these bids to, or these proposals to various people that might be willing at this point to bid on it.
got you. So I'm going to look for some assistance in drumming those people up.
I think we've drummed them. I think we
Yeah.
know. I think we.
Well, yeah, but now you have to get them to actually produce a bid. So I have to give you information to give them.
That's what we need. We just need that document, and then it's on them whether or not they want to bid or not. And
Yeah.
I have no idea what next summer looks like for these contractors, but
Yeah, neither do I. All right, so that's it. That's my report. I don't have anything else to say at this point. So I'll entertain a motion to,
I have something to say.
oh, certainly, Lori.
Thanks. So Renee, I think this is you, and I apologize if it isn't, but I just don't remember. But I want to make certain that when the warning is put together, you are now, and I say you lightly, I'm not sure that it's you. I feel like it was Amanda. I just don't remember. But so when the warning is put together, it's going to need to be more inclusive, because we will not be voting anything from our floor meeting like we often do. And that would be, for example, and I haven't even looked at last year's warning. It's not in front of me. Like the district clerk, because that's like every 2 years, and the treasurer. So I want to be certain that those items are not left off the warning, because those all have to go onto the ballot. And we're so, we really are tight for time. I know you might not be as anxious of, not you, Renee, but I want to have my ducks in a row, and I want to do it correctly the first time.
Yep.
I don't like
Okay.
doing things twice.
So what we should do is take the
I can send you the draft.
the warning that we have, and take the stuff that's normally on the annual meeting, floor meeting,
Correct.
and incorporate it.
And I don't even know who's up. I don't think it's me, but I know that generally you vote in Mary every year because you like to vote in
Yes,
the
the
treasurer.
delinquent tax collector we vote in every year. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
And
so
treasurer.
those items have to be on the
Yeah.
warning, because that entire warning has to be on the ballot this year.
Yeah,
So
and
the
I'll have to check. I think we were, yeah, you may be up because I think we may have failed to do something last year with respect to you that we were supposed to. I forget the timing. You're on a 2-year basis, and I think.
Well, actually, I'm the interim, Ray. I've been the interim for about 12 years now, till you
The
look for
interim?
somebody.
Oh, you mean
All right.
you're looking for someone to take over for you?
No, you asked me if I do it for a couple months, and that was 12 years ago.
But we vote you in. We voted you in a number of times. You haven't demurred.
So Lori, I can, I'll send you what we have just as kind of the framework right now, and you can
Sure.
edit it. The current status shows from the floor, moderator and delinquent tax collector. But Yeah, I mean, you can.
Sure, that'd be terrific. And so it is you, Renee, then, that does it.
It's a joint effort, you know.
Okay.
Amanda and I work together, so she has it there, and we typically try to tap into the clerks to make sure, you know, the vacancies that might be coming up for board seats, you know, we
Okay.
make sure that that's accurate, and then, you know, we want legal to take a quick look at it as well.
Okay. And then I guess to the Prudential Committee members, I'd like to say that I have one consented candidate. I need one more. I don't have that, and I need that immediately.
Okay.
And I know that some of you had mentioned a couple of names. So I'm just saying, I did send out that form. If you need it again, I can resend that if you have someone in mind, or I can send it to the person perhaps you have in mind.
All right, I was gonna take care of that tonight and I didn't, so I am 95% certain I will have that name, and hopefully form to you tomorrow.
Perfect, that's great. And then, yeah, that's great. And I'll fill in the empty spots and I'll make sure that you get a copy, and whoever else's form I might be getting will also get a copy, and that would be terrific.
Okay, great. And if you don't hear from me, feel free to bug me.
I will.
Okay.
And it's okay for the boys to leave it in the office with Tammy and they'll just give it to me.
Okay, great. All right,
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Kid mail. Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
So, all right. So I'm considering us logged out. No, that's not the word. Adjourned.
Motion.
Yep. Well, we actually don't need that, I think. But
If you want.
I'm just saying the gavel is down. So
Sounds fair enough.
good night, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Good night, everyone.
Yep.
Bye,
Thanks,
thanks.
Jim.
Thank you.